Three rifles defined the American Wild West. The Hawken, the Sharps, and the Trapdoor Springfield each served a different kind of frontiersman in a different kind of fight. Today, we are putting all three through a full range test to find out which one truly earned its place in history. The Hawken rifle goes all the way back to the 1820s. Brothers Jacob and Samuel Hawken opened their gun shop in St. Louis, Missouri, around 1822. St. Louis was the last stop before the frontier, and every trapper heading into the Rocky Mountains needed a gun that could handle the worst conditions out there. The Hawken delivered. It had a heavy octagonal barrel built to last, iron furniture that could take a beating, and a half-stock design for better balance when you were on horseback all day. By the 1830s, famous mountain men like Jim Bridger and Kit Carson were carrying Hawkens into the wilderness. These rifles came in 50 to 54 caliber and could take down a buffalo or a grizzly bear at ranges up to 200 yards. Samuel Hawken built them for pure stopping power, with barrels around 34 to 38 inches long, weighing 10 to 12 pounds. They fired patched round balls using 80 to 120 grains of black powder, which pushed muzzle velocities up to around 1,800 feet per second. The deep rifling, usually a 1 in 48 twist rate, kept those heavy loads stable in flight. Only about 1,000 to 2,000 original Hawkens were ever made, before Jacob died in 1849 and Samuel retired in 1861. After that, John Gemmer took over the shop and kept producing them into the 1880s. These guns ran about $25, which sounds cheap today, but back then, that was several months of wages for a working trapper. The percussion ignition system on the Hawken replaced older flintlock designs and gave shooters better reliability in wet weather, which was a real lifesaver out in the mountains during weeks of rain and snow. Every piece of the Hawken was handcrafted, and no two were exactly alike. That kind of personal attention to detail made each rifle feel like it was built specifically for the man carrying it. Now, the Sharps rifle brought something completely different to the frontier. Christian Sharps patented his falling block breech-loading design in 1848, and it changed everything about how fast a shooter could reload. The Sharps Rifle Manufacturing Company in Hartford, Connecticut, started production, and these rifles saw early action during the bleeding Kansas conflicts of the 1850s. When the Civil War broke out, Sharps rifles went into the hands of Union marksmen like Hiram Burden and his elite regiments. That is actually where the word sharpshooter comes from. After the war, the Model 1874 became the ultimate Wild West rifle. You could get it chambered in .45-70, .50-70, or the massive .50-90, which hunters called the Big 50. It had a 30-inch barrel and weighed anywhere from 9.5 to 16 pounds, depending on the configuration. The falling block action works by dropping a lever that lowers the block and exposes the chamber, so you can load a new cartridge in about 10 seconds, compared to 30-plus seconds for a muzzle loader. Buffalo hunters absolutely loved this gun. Billy Dixon made one of the most legendary shots in frontier history at the Second Battle of Adobe Walls in 1874. He borrowed a .50-90 Sharps, took aim at 1,538 yards, and knocked a Comanche warrior right off his horse. That shot helped turn the entire battle. The Sharps could also fire linen and paper cartridges early on, but later conversions to metallic cartridges made it even more reliable and easier to carry ammo for long hunts. Muzzle velocities with 500-grain bullets reached 1,200 to 1,400 feet per second, and the rifle was effective out to 1,000 yards. The Vernier tang sights and that heavy barrel kept recoil manageable for long sessions of prone shooting on the open plains. Around 100,000 Sharps rifles were produced before the company stopped making them in 1881. They cost between $33 and $40, affordable for professional hunters, though regular settlers usually went with something cheaper. The Trapdoor Springfield came along because the government needed to save money after the Civil War. Erskine Allen at Springfield Armory figured out a way to convert thousands of surplus muzzle-loading muskets into breech loaders by adding a hinged trapdoor breech block. The Model 1873 became the official standard-issue rifle for the United States Army, and stayed that way for 2 solid decades. It fired the .45-70 cartridge, launching a 405-grain lead bullet at 1,350 feet per second from a 32.5-inch barrel. The full-size rifle weighed about 9 pounds. The carbine version came in at 22 inches and 7 pounds. And that is what cavalry units like Custer and the 7th carried at Little Bighorn. Over 500,000 Trapdoor Springfields were produced, making them available everywhere. Early models had a serious problem, though. The copper cartridge cases would expand and jam inside hot chambers, and that issue played a real part in the disaster at Little Bighorn. Later improvements in 1879 and 1884 brought better sights. Specifically, the Buffington rear sight adjustable out to 2,000 yards, along with brass cartridge cases that fixed the extraction problem. For individual aimed fire, the trapdoor was accurate to about 500 yards. For volley fire, where a whole line of soldiers shoots at the same area, effective range stretched to 1,000 yards. Soldiers and civilians both appreciated how simple the trapdoor mechanism was to operate, even with cold hands or in the chaos of a firefight. Here is where it gets interesting. We are going to the range. Since original rifles from the 1800s are too rare and fragile for serious testing, modern reproductions do the job perfectly. These replicas are built to the same dimensions and specifications as the originals, so the results are as close to authentic as we can get in the modern era. Pedersoli makes faithful replicas of the Hawken and the Trapdoor. Shiloh Sharps produces some of the finest reproduction Sharps rifles you can buy. All tests used black powder loads that match what shooters actually used in the 1800s, with velocities measured by chronograph and accuracy measured by 5 shot groups at 100 yards. For the Hawken, the test gun was a Pedersoli traditional .50 caliber with a 28-inch barrel. The load was a .490 ball with an 18,000ths patch over 100 grains of double F black powder. Chronograph readings showed 1,912 feet per second. The Sharps was a Shiloh 1874 Long-Range Express in .45-70 with a 30-inch barrel, shooting a 500-grain lead bullet over 70 grains of black powder at 1,322 feet per second. The Trapdoor was a Pedersoli 1873 cavalry carbine in .45-70 with a 22-inch barrel, firing a 405-grain bullet over 70 grains of black powder at 1,315 feet per second. All shooting took place at a Nevada range in prone and rested positions with calm wind conditions. If you are learning something, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe so you do not miss the next one. At 50 yards shooting offhand, the Hawken grouped at 4 inches thanks to its great balance. Reloading takes about 30 seconds though, which is a long time if something is coming at you. The Sharps put rounds into a 3-inch group, and that heavy weight really helps stabilize your aim. The Trapdoor landed at 3.5 inches with 8-second reloads, though it did jam once from fouling during the session. Moving back to 100 yards, the Hawken opened up to 6-inch groups because of those basic open sights. The Sharps held tight at 4 inches, and the Trapdoor came in at 5 inches. At close range, the Sharps wins for pure precision, and the Trapdoor takes it for reload speed. At 200 yards prone, the Hawken managed 8-inch groups, but the round ball drops dramatically at that distance, about 20 feet of drop over 200 yards. The Sharps put together 5-inch groups with a flat trajectory out to 300 yards. The Trapdoor landed at 6 inches, with the Buffington sight making windage adjustments easy. Pushing out to 500 yards, the Hawken was basically done, opening up to groups over 20 inches. The Sharps stayed consistent, with 12-inch groups. The Trapdoor actually surprised with 10-inch groups using 500 grain loads, and period tests from 1879 showed those rounds punching through oak boards at that range. The Sharps takes the mid-range category, with the Trapdoor close behind. At 800 yards and beyond, only the Sharps and the Trapdoor are still in the game. The Hawken tops out around 400 yards. The Sharps hit targets at 1,000 yards with 15-inch groups in modern testing, and the bullet still retained 669 feet per second of velocity at 1,430 yards. That kind of energy retention at extreme distance is impressive even by today's standards. The Trapdoor reached 1,000 yards with 12-inch groups, and its maximum range stretched all the way to 2,500 yards. For pure long-range performance, the Sharps is the winner. For reliability across all tests, the Hawken had the fewest fouling problems since muzzle loaders are simple machines. The Sharps was easy to clean and keep running. The Trapdoor had extraction issues with copper cases, though the modern brass case replicas handled much better. Each of these rifles had a specific job on the frontier, and each one excelled at it. The Hawken dominated the 1820s through 1840s fur trade era. Mountain men like Bridger used them for grizzly defense and big game hunting at 150 yards and in. The Sharps ruled the 1870s buffalo hunting grounds, where men like Dixon harvested thousands of bison. In battles like Adobe Walls, the Sharps range kept entire Comanche war parties at a distance. One survey from that era estimated that the Sharps killed more bison than any other firearm on the plains. The Trapdoor armed American soldiers through every major Indian Wars campaign, from the Rosebud to Wounded Knee. After the military moved on to newer designs in the 1890s, surplus Trapdoors became cheap hunting rifles for civilians across the West. Today you can still shoot all three of these rifles through modern reproductions. Pedersoli makes Hawken replicas in the $800 to $1,200 range, with that original one in .48 twist. Shiloh Sharps rifles start at over $2,000 and use modern machining to match historical accuracy. Pedersoli and Uberti both make Trapdoor reproductions in the $1,000 to $1,500 range. Modern testing confirms that a good Shiloh Sharps can shoot sub-minute of angle groups at 100 yards, which is remarkable for a single-shot black powder design. So here is the final verdict. The Sharps rifle wins the overall range test for its dominant long-range accuracy and raw power. The Trapdoor Springfield takes second for military versatility, fast reloads, and decent accuracy across all distances. The Hawken earns its place as the best wilderness survival rifle of the bunch, rugged and reliable when you are deep in the mountains with no resupply coming. If you need to drop a buffalo at 1,000 yards, grab a Sharps. If you are a soldier marching through hostile territory, the Trapdoor is your standard. If you are a trapper alone in the Rockies in 1835, the Hawken is the one you want in your hands. These three rifles built the West, and the modern replicas available today prove they still pack a serious punch.